Kia ora anō. I'm Rachel. Welcome back to my channel, where I'm keen to talk about well-being and activism. I want our movements to be thriving and the people in them to be able to do great, meaningful work while living happy, fulfilling lives. And for the long term, sustainable activism is what I'm all about here. So the way that I'm starting this channel is to talk about my advice for new activists. I thought this is a good place to start. I'm no kind of expert in well-being and activism. These are just my reflections, the things I'll be telling myself going forward, the things that I wish I knew, and this is my way of keeping well-being at the forefront of my own activism. So please take what resonates with you. This is just the second video in this series, and today's topic is expect to have your privilege checked. So this is really about when we're challenged in our activism. And so because this stuff can be challenging, I recommend that if you haven't already, you check out the first video in this series, which is about knowing that you are enough. And you may want to even rewatch that one if you struggle with this stuff, okay? For whatever reason. It might be helpful to rewatch it. And be able to come back to this video with your feet on the ground, maybe a cup of tea or whatever makes you feel good, and just be able to take a deep breath and know that you are enough. There's no perfect activists. We're all in the struggle, learning this stuff as we go, relearning it. Yeah, it's just ongoing, so be gentle with yourself. So the other thing I wanted to say is that, before we sort of dive into my advice, is that I'm going to assume that the people listening to this are going to have a mix of experiencing privilege in some areas and experiencing oppression in other areas of their lives. So this whole idea of living in a society that has privilege and oppression is that some people are treated as normal and therefore superior, and other people, or other aspects of people's identity, means that they are treated as abnormal and inferior. So because some people are treated as normal and other people are treated as abnormal, it's really easy to lose sight of the fact that actually really the majority of us are in this abnormal group who experience some kind of oppression. So in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and I'm really talking about in Western societies here, I'm sorry I don't have any experience with living in societies outside of my own, which is in New Zealand. But in Western society, so in Aotearoa, New Zealand, I think it's about 50% of the population, or close to 50% of the population, experience some kind of disability by the time you include elderly people who have age-related impairments. And then you've got women, that cuts the population by 50% in another way, and of course children and youth. So then once you've just got the able-bodied adult men left, of that, if you take out men of colour, any kind of queer men, so gay, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, transgendered men, and workers, men who are working but don't own the means of production, or men who are living in poverty, that's really just most of us. And there's only a small group of wealthy white dudes left. So that's who I'm pitching I know that there will be some white, able-bodied, cis, heterosexual men listening to this. And you'll just have a little bit more work to do than the rest of us in acknowledging and learning about your privilege, because it won't be as easy to see. That's the way that privilege works. Society designs it in a way so that it's hard for us to perceive the things that are given to us by privilege. But I'm assuming for the sake of this video that most of the people watching will experience privilege in some areas and oppression in other areas. And of course there'll be people watching as well who experience oppression in multiple areas of their identity. And in fairness, I probably don't have anything to say, you know, right? But I hope that you find this at least heartening, this video. So I'm going to break this into two parts anyway, assuming that most people will experience privilege and oppression. And I'll talk first of all about times when you have your privilege challenged, and then I'll ask you to change hats and think about times when your elements of your identity, where you experience oppression, are triggered, maybe is a good word, or challenged. So advice for people who are challenged in their... Oh, sorry, before I get into that too, the other thing I wanted to say is I'm not going to spend time in this video preaching to you or trying to convince you to give a shit about oppression. I'm just going to assume good faith. And other than just to say that challenges of working across difference in groups are one of the biggest things that cause groups to collapse, movements to stay small, or and individual members to burn out of the struggle. And that's either because they have been challenged multiple times on their privilege and struggle to be able to carry that and continue in the work, or because they have been in movements that have been insensitive to the oppression that they experience, and they've become burnt out by, you know, giving a lot of energy to a movement that they really care about, but feeling like that movement doesn't actually care about them. So I think that we can't talk about well-being and activism without taking privilege and oppression really seriously. This is the stuff that can really hurt. So we need to talk about this. So yeah, getting your privilege challenged. This is when somebody might come up to you either in your meeting, so somebody within the group that you're working with, the organization that you're working with, or somebody from outside, maybe as you're organizing an event or at the event itself or something, and say to you, the way that you've behaved is, for example, transphobic. And that's when you have to sort of breathe deep, remind yourself that you're enough if you're new to this and it's really challenging. And then usually the best and simplest answer is just to say, shit, I'm really sorry. I can understand why you say that, and I won't do that again. And then work hard not to do that again. Or if you don't really understand what they're saying and why they might say that your behavior was transphobic, for example, that's when you can, again, you can say, shit, I'm really sorry. I've clearly got some learning to do. I'll work on that, and then go away and work on that. Now, it's nice to have some language to use. I think it's good to have some simple language like that, and that's why I sort of offer simple responses. Because if you're all in, if you're sort of, if you're taken aback by something like that, none of us set out, I think, to offend people or hurt people. So that can be quite startling when somebody responds to your work like that. So it's good to be able to have something simple and straightforward to say, and then go away and do the work yourself. The reason that it can be so hard is that we live in a society that surrounds us with oppressive language and behaviors, and we learn those behaviors without even meaning to. We benefit from them and we don't even notice that we benefit from them. And at the same time, we have a society that tells us that it's deeply, deeply wrong to be prejudiced. So particularly to be racist, like that is something is seen as really not okay, one of the great evils. And so it can really rattle us at our core if we're somebody, especially if we're somebody who is fighting for social justice and really wants to see the world be a better place. It can rattle us at our core if we haven't done any thinking around this stuff before, to feel like, oh, this person thinks that I'm a really bad person. Just know that, for one, they might not think that you're a really bad person. They probably encounter transphobia in their life all of the time. They are really fucking sick of it, but that doesn't mean that they think that you are evil. We usually have a lot of yucky feelings come up when somebody challenges us in this way, and I recommend, don't make that the person's problem who's challenged you. Go away, let all those feelings rage in you for a few days. You might feel really angry. They might have told you it in a really angry way if they're really fed up, and that never feels nice, so you might feel angry, you might feel really, really ashamed, you might want to push away the criticism and not believe it, you might want to gather all of your trans friends or whatever around you to tell you that you're not transphobic, or if you don't have trans friends, you might want to retreat to the spaces that don't have any trans representation at all and can just, assure you that it's fine to not care about trans people because, they're just a small group of people and who cares. But I just urge you to let all that stuff wash through you. That's just shame triggering you. And once that has passed, like I say, do that, talk with people about it, do that work on your own, and then if you haven't done some learning around this stuff, do some learning around it, If you don't know much about people's experiences of oppression, you've come to the right place. YouTube is full of so many people really generously and really clearly explaining their lived experience of oppression. So yeah, get searching. And you'll quickly find, so much beautiful content. The other thing with this is that once you start waking up to oppression, it can be a little bit overwhelming because there are lots of different ways that people experience oppression, and it's a lot of information to take in. And because we can know something in a moment, we can understand intellectually very quickly why something is wrong or why we should do things another way. But it can take many years of practice to actually change the way that we behave or the way that we think in a moment or the way that we respond to somebody. Because that kind of conditioning is not just intellectual, it's in our bodies and in our hearts and in our subconscious and all that. So much like I said last time about taking on any new language or behaviours or lifestyle features in activism, go slow, be generous with yourself, know that it's okay to take your time with this, and you don't need to be perfect. You really just need to be genuine and authentic and be making an effort. And give it time to integrate into your whole person, and be gentle with yourself along the way. If you don't know where to start, I think start close to home. So start with start with looking at who you are, you know, what areas of privilege you experience, what areas of oppression you experience, and learning about those. And then start with the people who are in your immediate group. So the people that have challenged you and what their issues are and what they want you to start working on. Or maybe you haven't been challenged, but there might be people in your group. There are likely to be people in your group who are different from you. So to be a good ally to them, you know, learn about their experiences. And the best way you can learn about that is just by, and this is how to, you know, this is, you know, a good thing to do anyway, you should be striving for this, is just learn how to really listen when they speak. So rather than hitting them up and be like, oh, what's it like to be a woman of colour? Just really listen when they speak. And you can do some, you know, do some background reading or do some background, you know, watching of videos or something to support that learning. And the other things will come in time. The thing that I really, really want to stress is that you try to resist the urge to go, oh, that was yucky being challenged. I'm going to learn everything I can about this particular form of oppression, or every form of oppression, but let's say this particular form of oppression, so that never happens to me again. And you might not necessarily think that consciously, because, I mean, that sounds pretty arrogant to assume that you can do that. But you might on some level have that kind of motivation, right? So just keep checking with yourself about that, because it can lead you into some dark places. For one, you might, you know, say if you are working on anti-racism stuff and decolonization, and as a white person, and you've done a lot of thinking about that, and your group that you're used to organizing with, you know, you've really got that down with that group, and you know, you and your friends in that group communicate well, and it's all going well. You know, you might think that you've got it sorted, and then you come into another situation, another group of people, another dynamic, maybe outside of your group or in a later group or organization that you're working in, and somebody challenges you again, and you don't understand. That can really rock your world a little bit, and you can be like, oh God, how can I be fucking this up? I've done so much thinking about this, you know, was that all just am I a fraud, you know, or did I not really learn that properly, or do I actually not care about this stuff as much as I thought I did, or, you know, whatever. You can just really tie yourself in knots about it. And the simple fact is, this stuff is complicated, and it's a lifetime's worth of work. And yeah, like I say, different group dynamics, different political history of that particular organization or whatever, different wider collective of other white people around you who might be doing a lot of stuff that really pisses off the people of color that you're working with, etc. Yeah. So yeah, if you can try to keep in mind that new challenges will keep coming up, it makes it easier to deal with it when they do. The other place it can go to, and this is much more insidious, I think, is that if you're really wanting to wrap yourself in so much, you know, language, and, you know, of being this great ally, and you know, promoting yourself that way, and everybody around you believes you to be that way, that can, you know, that can allow you to, how do I want to say this? It can get into a really insidious place where people around you, if you've got all this great sort of language of being an ally, and you're promoting, you know, you're talking about that a lot, you're surrounding yourself but with people who experience oppression that you don't, and really taking on a lot of language and behaviors, but you are doing it in a way that tries to shield yourself from criticism. That can actually be a really gross power trip, and it can get into a weird ego place where instead of being a good ally, you're actually you can actually really abuse power, and the people around you, particularly the people who share the same kinds of privilege as you. So again, say if it's with decolonization, and you're a white person who uses all this language, other white people, like say if you are really being shitty to some people of color, it might make it harder for them to challenge you on that behavior, because particularly other white people around will be like, oh no, but she's really onto it about that stuff. She wouldn't do that. And the people challenging you are likely to be able to see through your bullshit, but it makes it easier for other people to dismiss them, and it just makes it harder to challenge. And that's really yucky, Try to do your own work in your heart to protect yourself and your heart, so that you don't feel like you need to protect yourself in this kind of way, is what I'm saying. Because it doesn't lead to good allyship in healthy groups. It leads to you'll find yourself being challenged again and again and again and again, and no matter how sort of correct your language becomes or correct your ways of organizing become, if it's not going to a deeper level where you can meaningfully share power, people will just keep trying to batter away at you until you shift. What else did I want to say about privilege? I think that's all for now. But my basic point is just be humble with it. Know that it's okay to be doing the work. Just doing the work. So moving on to times that you are in a group where you might be a minority. You might be one of the people who experience oppression, and the people that, in a particular way. Like say you're a woman in a male-dominated group. Or, whatever your area of oppression is. My advice in that situation is, if you don't already, learn about and acknowledge your privilege, which is what Uma Narayan calls insider's epistemic privilege, which is just a fancy way of saying that people who experience oppression get it in a way that people who are outsiders to that oppression, people who don't experience that form of oppression, will never get it. No matter how much they learn and how much they read, you will feel it in your gut daily, what it's like to live in your body in this world. And we live in a world that, like I said before, tries to make it difficult to perceive that. And so it can be confusing, because the people around you, and maybe your own intellect, might be telling you, no, that's not really happening. They're not treating me with less respect, or they're not dismissing my priorities because I am a woman, or because I'm queer, or whatever. But on some deeper level, you will know that they are, and trust that knowing. And you may need to find, or actually I strongly recommend finding other people who experience the same stuff as you to surround yourself with and talk with. And that might be in person in your group, or in surrounding groups around you, or it might be online. But find other people, or if you don't have anyone nearby, it might even just be watching those same YouTube video clips about the oppression that you experience, because it'll help you to articulate what you're experiencing, believe what you're experiencing, and communicate it to others. Yeah, because we all basically live with ongoing gaslighting that everybody's telling, letting us know that our feelings can't be trusted, and that is not good for our hearts or our souls, and it is not good for our energy levels and our movements. So that's my first main tip, is just trust your knowing and cultivate ways to articulate it. The other thing I want to say about that too, if you're getting together with mates, like friends who are nearby and talking about this stuff, don't be ashamed of it just being a whole lot of sitting around and bitching for ages, because like I've heard of people dismissing people for doing that, and that's not fair, because this stuff is so hard to articulate and can be so hard to perceive, but feels so real and feels so yucky. Sometimes you do just need to sit around and bitch, sit around and complain and just describe your experiences that have felt not okay, maybe for months even, before you can clearly articulate, this is why it was a problem. Many of us are experiencing this problem. This is the thing that needs to change for this to not be so hard on us anymore. So yeah, don't feel ashamed about bitching. Embrace the bitching, is what I say. That also brings me to the other thing I wanted to say, my other piece of advice for people who experience oppression, who are minorities in the movements that they're in. So often those people will find themselves in a position, we'll find ourselves in a position of having to advocate in. So having to do a lot of work trying to help the group that we are in to understand our experiences and understand how they can make it better for us to be in that group, how they can take our priorities seriously, and how they can make it hurt less for us to be part of that movement. And I just want to acknowledge that work, and I want you to acknowledge, if you're doing that work or if you find yourself doing that work, I want you to acknowledge that as work. Take care of yourself within it. Know that it's work that you're doing on top of all the other work that you're doing for the campaign or whatever. And you're not just doing it and acknowledge that you're not just doing it for yourself. You're not just doing it to make it easier for you to be in that movement. You're doing it so that the movement itself can be stronger and richer and engage with a wider community. So it's meaningful, worthwhile work. And I want to say too, for both people who are privileged and trying to get up to speed on this stuff, and people who are experiencing oppression and trying to get their group to shift, I know that this work can slow down your campaign. It can make it feel like you're not moving as quickly on the area that you might be advocating around. Like, say if your focus is animal rights, and you seem to be spending a lot of time talking about making your events accessible to people with disabilities, and that doesn't feel like you're progressing with your animal rights goals fast enough. Just know that this is knowledge and skills and relationship skills that you will carry with you for the rest of your life, and will come in hand. It'll be useful in so many different areas that you don't even know yet. And it will make your movement more relevant to such a wider community. So it's not wasted time. It's not wasted energy. But back to people who are experiencing oppression in their groups. If that is feeling like meaningful, hopeful work that you're doing with your group, advocating in, that's awesome. That's wonderful work to be doing, and more power to you. I want to give you permission too, though, that if you start to realize, or if it starts to feel like it's just sapping your energy, and the group starts to just feel toxic to you, don't, you have permission to leave that group. Don't feel like you have to stay in a group and that is sucking away your motivation to be in the struggle. Protect yourself and trust that you will, if you leave, that you will find other ways of doing the work that's meaningful for you. You will find other people and other ways to be in that struggle. And if that's your experience of that group, more than likely there have been other people like you who have told them the same stuff before, and there will be other people like you coming into the group after you go who will be telling them the same thing. So it's not all on your shoulders to fix this toxic group. Yeah. So find the people that are great to work with and that lift you up and that, fill you up and feed you as much as you are feeding the movement. I think these things have to be reciprocal to be sustainable. Those people will be out there, Yeah. So I could talk about this all day, but I should probably leave it there because I don't want to drag on and on about it. And also, I'm filming this on my phone and I can see my hands starting to shake holding the phone up. So yeah, I found it a bit hard to know how to pitch this because, of course, people have such different levels of knowledge and are coming at lots of different places. So I hope that you found it helpful or at least interesting. And if you did enjoy it, press the like button so that I know you enjoyed it. And, if there's people that you think could benefit from this, please share it. And please comment in the comments below. There's probably all kinds of things that I left out. And so I really invite you to share. There's so much knowledge and experience in our activist communities, and so this could be a great forum to share some of that knowledge. Or if there's things that you are uncertain about still, put some of those questions up there as well. Either me or somebody else might be able to come back with some great answers. I'll just say too, though, that for this particular conversation, I will be monitoring the comments, and if I think that there's anything harmful to people who experience oppression, I won't put it up there because I want this to be safe for people who experience oppression. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's for me. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Please join me again for my next piece of advice for new activists. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other. Noho ora mai.